Good evening and welcome to News Sources, the home of fair comment and where sources make a big difference. Well, tonight the echoes of a requiem mass held for the slain businessman Jacob Juma have reverberated across the country. The message from his family to the police is one: get our father's killers and have them prosecuted.
Well, it is clear that the National Police Service has taken its foot off the investigations pedal and is now turning to a public that has zero trust in investigations that the police have conducted before. Now, the National Police Service must move with speed and get Jacob Juma's killers.
Now, tonight, the government is determined to close down the Dadaab refugee camp. The government says the camp has been used to recruit, plan, execute terror attacks on the Kenyan soil. Is the government profiling those seeking refuge in its own country? That's where we're starting from tonight. Our very own James Smart is joining us again tonight.
Brilliant.
Robin Toskin, karibu sana. Umethuku you were here yesterday, but for a few minutes, welcome to the show. Toskin, are we serious in fighting terrorism, or we want refugees out of this country for good?
I think the government thinks it's one of the ways of tackling the terrorist problem, but there are so many sides to it, and it's very important for maybe the government to come out and give the whole plan. Otherwise, it will look like they just are eager to take out the Somali refugees, which could be unfortunate. But if there's a study that shows really that all the suffering that we had under in the hands of the terrorists is all from the Dadaab camp, then they have got the right to do so.
Absolutely. Now, let's listen to what the Interior Cabinet Secretary, General Kanseri, had a press conference yesterday. This is what he said yesterday.
Hosting of refugees has been costly for Kenya. As a country, we have been glad to help our neighbors and all those in need, sometimes at the expense of our security. There comes a time when we must think primarily about the security of our people. Ladies and gentlemen, that time is now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the time is now. Home, the time is now to kick off refugees. A nuisance causing security problems. Let's kick them out.
Sure. If you have listened to what even the UN has said, is that they can't interfere with this. I mean, Kenya has all the freedom to kick out its refugees. The issue that is coming up now, all the years we have, the refugees have been an issue because of our, putting pressure on our institutions, our social amenities. Now the card of insecurity has been flagged, and it has been flagged for some time now. Now, you see, once the issue of security comes in, it is above the rest of us. Once the government says that refugees are a source of insecurity.
Is it so? Is it just about the government saying, Dennis, that these guys are the cause of our problems, and then we say, well, it's actually true since the government has said it?
I think it's more than that. The government has been mooting this idea. They tried it again 1 year ago, and the international community came hard down on them and said, you cannot just kick out refugees from your country. But it appears back channeling of this issue has been going on for a long time. 2 of the United Nations saying Kenya has every right to have these people go back home. But Toskin, can this be a solution to these never-ending issues of insecurity in this country?
I don't think it will be a solution. The only thing that I know is that for the longest time, the security department in this country has been taking the largest chunk of the budget. Every time the budget is read, we are told that this much is going to be spent on the security of this country. But what comes out in the end is that that money cannot be accounted for. So the real problem of this issue is the question of corruption. We've seen how that money is not accounted for. We've seen how our own security agents are compromised and letting in dangerous people that come into this country and hurt the country. So it's preposterous for the government to say that the solution is forcibly removing these people. In the end, they could even trip in the process of trying to remove them forcibly and then cause another backlash that will raise the hue and cry of the international community. So it's important for them to sit down and do the analysis and see where they have also gone wrong in terms of spending.
But Home, the government really does have a point. As the host community, the Kenya can say, well, this is our hosts ends here, and please go to the next country. Go to Ethiopia.
Certainly, Kenya, like any other country, has international obligations to host people fleeing from their countries, I mean, hostile situations. But you see, Dadaab and even Kakuma are camps. When you can't manage what is happening inside a camp and then you break it, you release, we have more than 600,000 refugees in 2 camps only. You relocate them back to their homes, okay? Now, what you have done is that you have broken a camp, but the people are free. You know, that's why I said, I don't know what's the problem with managing what happens in a camp. It's just like a high school. If you were to say there are crimes being orchestrated in a high school, in a school, or in a university, would you break the university so that becomes now the solution to the problem? Okay, you see what I'm talking about?
Yes.
There was a time even when we had an issue, the University of Nairobi wanted to be relocated from where it is now because of issues of riots. It was to be taken, I don't know, to some other places. But the question still would be, are the people in this university?
Well, it's been tried before. Mobutu Sese Seko killed off an entire university because there was riots.
Fair enough, but the people are still free,
and possibly it worked. Dennis, the question then of how not only the legality, but the government actually does have a point.
It has a point. It's a big point, and the biggest point will be if getting rid of these refugees can solve internal terrorism that has been a big problem, then well and good. But
we get rid of a terrorist and then we build a wall.
we've been talking about it. As long as we have porous borders in this country, then it's useless asking these people to go back. And again, it's not a question of having them going back. How many refugees from Dadaab or Kakuma refugee camp have been involved in terror activities in this country? How many?
The question would be,
how many?
Are we so good in intelligence? Because we invest a lot of money to try and track these guys down. But then we seem to have failed in terms of collecting proper intelligence. If it is done, those people can be managed within those camps, because if whatever they want to do, it could trigger the problem that we are seeing in Europe. We've seen refugees streaming all the way from Middle East, from Syria, all the way to Hungary and those European countries. But they are managing it because they have invested in intelligence. But in Kenya, we allocate money, but then that money does not do what is expected to be done.
All right, let me do what is expected of me, and that's locally, several families drawn from the Somali community feel they are being profiled just because they are Somalis. From Isili to Mandera, from Mandera, Bungoma, members of Somali community cannot get jobs, cannot get IDs, and worst, they are not trusted in some areas of work. Let's just listen in.
We are here to express our dissatisfaction with the way the government forces, the security forces, the government intelligence is handling our youth, especially the students from the bright cadres, medical doctors, engineers, and even lawyers are disappearing at a very high alarming rate.
All right, there we go. People from the Somali origin Somali community do not feel they're part of this country. They even do not want to take IDs of this country because they'd rather, stay in camps and then go to the US or Canada.
You see, the problem we have is that we have Kenyan Somalis. We have Somali. I think is that how I call them?
Somali.
Yes, the Somali from the Somali. So the issue has always been that we can't differentiate. In fact, the rest of us who are not Somali may not differentiate. The problem is that even the government itself and those who would be the security agents, even in Isli here in Nairobi, you don't have even to go far to the border. In Isli here, as long as you are Somali, by the time we get to know whether you are Kenyan Somali or you are Somali, it's always an issue. So that's why they would feel
then it's same difference. Okay, Somali is Kenyan Somali.
Same difference. I mean, you don't have to be. This is not more Kenya times when you're asked to produce your ID for you to be Kenyan, as it were. Kenya is not at war with itself. Kenya is at war with Al-Shabaab across in Somalia, and I feel Kenyan Somalis where they are at the moment. And remember, this happened some time back where we somehow, the entire country knew that the biggest place where you can find Kenyan Somalis or Somalis as it were was in South Sea. And there was an entire crackdown of security agencies, and somehow you push an entire community into a corner, Toskin.
Yeah, it's true. And maybe if I will shock you that I come from a community that lives across the border, the Sabaot people. I'll tell you for free here that there are so many Sabaot who carry non-Sabaot names, Luya names, because anytime you present yourself, you want an ID, the people responsible for the registration of people say, can you prove that you are Kenyan? Maybe you are Sebei. Anytime you are labeled as Sebei, then you become Ugandan. But when you are labeled as Sabaot, then you are Kenyan. But then we know ourselves, how we live across the border, because anyway, we know that the boundaries that were drawn the other day in 1922 by the Europeans only helped to put us apart. Therefore, I can only understand the feeling of these Somali people, because they have been pushed to a corner and they feel, look, if we can do anything bad,
isn't that the overall point then, or the overarching point of this is that we've said an entire community is responsible for insecurity and terrorism and kick them out of the camp so that they can go to Somalia. Feeds into terrorists, direct.
Fair. That's what we said. We have 600,000 refugees, if we may count them like that. Even if we were to do away with them, how many other Somalis do we have here? Whether Kenyan, whether Somalis from Somalia, how many other non-refugees? What are the assurances that even the people who leave the country will not come back? We just discussed that yesterday, last night. Said our Kenyan borders are such that you can walk in and out anytime. You know, ask the people who man these borders, they will tell you. The way of walking in and out, just the whole 600,000 of them may come back even if you got to transfer them.
Maybe James, can we then build a wall, the Great Wall of China?
It appears that should be then the logical sequence of events. After we kick out the 600,000 refugees who are problematic, they're causing all insecurity in this country, then we build a serious wall. Donald Trump, building somewhere in Mexico, between Mexico and the US. We do ours, that covers the entire Somalia. Truth is, I think Kenya thinks that it has a trump card. We can always go to international community and say we are the host community and we have the power and time to decide when we can have these, refugees in our country, and when we cannot host them, you cannot force us to host them. That's the trump card that we're using here, possibly to some political end.
But I think justice and equality can always neutralize this. We don't need that wall. But if we can make the Somali feel that they are part of this country, that would be fine. If we can make the border communities feel that they are part and parcel of the state, that would be fine. But when you start excluding them, make sure that they don't get the jobs, they don't get the opportunities, then you are breeding a problem. Even if you create that wall, they will always climb over it.
Forget about it, not even about climbing over. A wall is just a wall. The people who man the wall are the people who matter. It does not matter how high the wall is, money can always climb over that wall, okay? And that's what has been happening. I ask myself all the time, Kenya does not produce firearms. Kenya does not produce all these arms that are all over the country. So at what point did they cross the country? And who is this who was supposed to man that border where they crossed through and did not do the job? And I always answer myself that money mans that border. So no matter how high the wall is, we will have a way of coming back to it.
All right, have a way of coming back, Dennis?
It's neither here nor there. And as long as we don't have internal policing mechanisms, as long as we don't invest in intelligence and stuff like that, I think policing our porous borders will be chaotic as it were. But again, staying on this, do you recall the rounding up of Kenyan Somalis in 2014? The government turned the Kasarani Stadium into some sort of concentration camp where they held up to 1,000 people for screening. Toskin, do you remember this day?
Yeah, I remember that day, and I think I really felt let down by the state machinery, because at the end of it all, whatever you do to individuals or communities, you have to treat them with the dignity they deserve. Even if they are foreigners, make it that they are Somalis, yes. But then how do you handle them? I had an opportunity of traveling with some South Sudanese on my way to Lodwar. And at every stage, as we went along the Kitale-Lodwar road, the police manning the roads could always just remove those guys. They would just hold them there, asking them about their documentation. They get the documentation out. But at the end of it all, they ask for money. That is not treating them well.
Talking about rogue policemen, that particular time, there were serious concerns from Kenyan Somalis and Somalis, as it were, that our sons, our daughters have been forced to go missing for some time. Give us some money back, and then we have them released to you in the name of fighting terrorism. Did you come across?
Sure, sure. Certainly, I have friends from Eastleigh. I have friends in South Sea. Those are the areas where some of those people would be. I mean, that's where you find them. And at this particular point, what was happening in the country was such that people tended to support that move, okay? Unless you had this conscience that what is being done is wrong. But I ask myself also, at what point do you say that because of crimes that are happening in the country, it is now time to screen, okay? What is this that happened or did not happen that is now necessitating the screening? Where did you let things go wrong? You see, you only come to remedy things after they have gone that far. That's when you collect a whole population, take them to a stadium, lock them up there, and now start telling them that now you're locked here until you prove yourself to be a Kenyan, okay? That's even the worst way of doing things. If some of these people were to have taken some legal action, okay, that would be a very good ground for seeking
James,
damages.
that particular time, the Kenyan psyche was try as much as you can to bring down cases of terrorism in this country. Was government justified to?
In fact, I mean, I think to be fair with the context of the time, there were a couple of terrorist incidents that had happened in the country, and the government didn't have a coherent narrative on why so many people all of a sudden fell through the hands of the terrorists. And it was the most easiest thing to do is to find us an excuse. And excuse was very simple, similar to what you're having today, that hang on, Eastleigh is a place where we cannot man it because there are several, people who've walked in there that we don't know who they are and what. So we need to get them out and flush them out. And in fact, the terrorists, were camping in Eastleigh, and we had stories being fed coming through the media. Or there's a house that has been, found by the police which has so much arms, and they were just about to get to town to commit a terror attack. And the media, we do a good job of selling the narrative before the major event. So it worked very well. And at that time, the Kenyan public, really coming out of a shocking terrorist incident, wanted to see some action. And the government gave them some action. Doskin.
Yeah, and which in the end, again, did not serve the purpose that they wanted to serve. Because if you are going to do things based on emotion, based on the outcry, especially from the public, then you are going always to miss the point. It's always important for people to retreat. The security agencies sit down, analyze the situation, and see the way forward.
They would argue, to be fair, since they are screening, since they went to Kasarani and Eastleigh, incidents of terrorism have reduced, factually.
Yeah,
They can argue that.
Yeah, sure, they can argue that. You see, if crimes are being sourced from a certain point, if you target that point, even if you are targeting the wrong persons, the culprits will have a way of reducing the activities, going down, going under. But the point still remains. If Doskin has committed a crime, or we suspect he's about to commit a crime, now we don't load up everyone here. We don't put everyone in this room to a camp or to some concentration field, so that in that process we are now trying to find who is who here. Okay. Most of the people who are picked from there, if you had those incidences, they were very ugly incidences, okay? And that is not what a government ought to do. A government must be one that is not, that does not come to firefight. Okay? It starts way before.
All right. We assume that the government knows. Then it's the principle of unintended consequences. Kicking out 600,000, screening, every Somali Kenyan or Somali in this country. Possibly 2-3 years, a few months down the line. What happens?
No idea, Smart. I mean, we'll have to wait to see how this plays out. But it can be counterproductive. It can be very productive if they can do it, and then now they close their borders and have in place screening mechanisms.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That means that we can now be joined by the former Deputy Speaker, Farah Maalim. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. We're having a discussion around the government's point of view of closing down the 2 refugee camps. Why can Kenya close the camps?
Good evening to you. It's very interesting to hear the presumption that some people are making that actually the operations in the fleet did reduce terrorism. Some of people like me were convinced from the beginning that the bulk of those blow-ups on the matatus and the small cars you see there were the work of our own intelligence. It was not the work of Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab has got a hallmark of claiming responsibility for the things they do. You have to understand the way they do that. And they never claim responsibility for that. And the idea of rounding up 700,000 people and taking them into a concentration camp in Kasarani and coming back later and saying that the thing has reduced. No, they were never responsible for the thing from the beginning.
Deputy Speaker,
the point I'm trying to tell you now
yes,
is that we have got reduced incidents of Al-Shabaab activities in Northeastern Province because all the security machinery right now is headed by Kenya and Somalia.
All right.
And this is what I've been talking about myself for donkey years.
Absolutely.
Now, when you try to remove these refugees out of here without following the international conventions, the Geneva Convention on the Protection of Refugees, the reason why the Kenya government is doing this now is nothing other than, and I'll tell you this, and I'm prepared to defend it, it's because they think that if the European Union is able to compensate Turkey to the tune of $6 billion for keeping the refugees out and rather stopping them from crossing the Mediterranean, why can't Kenya get a deal for that too now?
Absolutely. So in your mind, Deputy Speaker, sorry to interrupt you, in your mind, this is about the money, but legally, the host community, which is Kenya, has all the rights to say, we've done our job, can they be hosted elsewhere? They do have that right.
No, you see, let me tell you one thing. To begin with, Somalia is just across the board. We cannot choose our neighbor. The Somalis will be with us for the rest of, until doomsday. Now, that's one thing. Legally, you cannot say that, and I'll tell you one thing why you cannot say that. You cannot have the presence of our own forces inside Somalia, the Ethiopian forces inside Somalia, the Burundi forces, and the Ugandan forces, who are able to secure Somalia from the clutches of Al-Shabaab, frankly, because we have no interest in doing that. We want to prolong this thing and use it as a blackmail for the international community. And then suddenly again we come back now to blackmail the international community because of the refugees, the vulnerable refugees who are living with us. Come on, let's,
Deputy Speaker, come on. Deputy Speaker, this is Dennis Onsarigo. Have you had this sense of feeling from Kenyan Somalis who feel they've been profiled? I mean, we have had cases where people have been denied IDs, people are being looked at in a suspicious way in their workplaces. This has never happened before. Are you getting this information from Kenyan Somalis?
I am suffering. My own community who go into the tens of the thousands. The young men and the young women cannot access this thing. Let me tell you, Dennis, when the refugees came in 1991 in Northeastern Province had a terrible drought. And the Kenya government did not do anything to protect its own population in Northeastern Province. So what happened, so many poor people who lost their livestock went and registered themselves as refugees, not for any other purpose, but only for the purpose of accessing relief food. And those children now, and the children of those people who have been profiled, have a problem accessing their own national identity card. And that is a problem. But by saying that we remove the refugees and mass at a go is not a solution to that problem itself. Dennis, can I just remind you one thing?
Yes.
Those of you who remember how the Congo or the Zaire problem started, it's because 200,000 Banyamulengers who were in Congo, or rather the DRC that time, suddenly one day, our friend, what's his name, late Mobutu Sese Seko wakes up and says this Banyamulenge should go and go to either Burundi or Rwanda. We don't want them in Zaire. We will have a situation like that if you don't give their birthright to the Kenyans who have been profiled because they were trying to access food there. I mean, that is one other time bomb. I don't know when it's going to explode, but it's certainly bound to explode.
Okay.
Mheshimiwa, this is Robin Toskin. I would like to ask this question that, is there any proactive mechanism the Somali community leadership is putting in place in order to allay the fears that a section of government could be having about this Dadaab camp?
A section of the government to be doing what?
Is the Somali leadership, the Somali community leadership, that of Kenya, are they doing anything to allay the fears that Dadaab camp is a cell of terrorist acts?
Let me tell you one thing. Basically, the kind of the political leadership that we have right now is a common knowledge. I don't want to take a lot of time on that. I mean, your observation is as good as mine. I mean, we have the maximum numbers of members of parliament from the region right now in both houses. And unfortunately, it's only Bill Otero who makes statements once in a while, and because he was threatened by the CID, it seems to have also run back and retreated into some kind of a safe zone. But having said that, the fact of the matter is that moving 500,000 people, in the manner in which our deputy president one time had said, we'll just put them into trucks and throw them across the border on the other side. Will be interesting to see that, but I can assure you one thing. The repercussion is going to be so explosive that I don't think we'll have a region. I can assure you nothing, because taking 500,000 there and 65% or 70% of them are young men. They already had lived in a situation of hopelessness when they were in one big prison called Dadaab, and now again you take them into that. They will become a very powerful recruiting ground for Al-Shabaab or any other person who comes up with an ideology that says we need to fight for our rights as Somalis, as an ethnic community.
And right there I must ask you then, Mr. Farah Maalim, so in your mind, how should the Kenyan government be dealing with, obviously, an insecurity problem, porous borders, and the fact that, in fact, Al-Shabaab and the bad guys would use the opportunity of the Dadaab camp and every other issues that we have in the country to get into the country? How, in your mind, can this be sorted out?
That's a very, very good question. Let me tell you one thing, my brother, and I want every Kenyan to hear my statement on this.
Yeah.
We took officers who are of the ethnic Somali community to Garissa, and within 2 months right now, you hardly hearing of any incident in Northeastern Province, Garissa, Wajir, and Mandera. Because you have patriotic Kenyans who look the same, speak the same language, and basically who can easily be able to pick out the terrorists there. But the thing that we need to know is that Al-Shabaab is thriving and living today because there is either by omission or commission, the regional community, the AMISOM, the Kenyans, the Ethiopians, the Burundians, the Rwandese, the Ugandans, do not want to end Al-Shabaab, because Al-Shabaab is something that can be ended in the shortest possible time. But they don't want it because it's a milking cow. They're milking the international community. The UN is paying the bill. Museveni is sitting tight. He's very happy. His officers are getting good salary. Of course, some of them are dying also. He doesn't care. And Kenya doesn't care too. They're also in the charcoal business. They're in the sugar business. They're in God knows what kind of a business. That goes all the way to very high levels in the system here. The best solution is re-establish and support the establishment of a Somali national security system. Okay. I can assure you, 5,000 Somali officers inside Somalia will genuinely be able to destroy Al-Shabaab and completely eradicate it in less than 6 months. But then who is interested in eradicating Al-Shabaab, for your information? Let me tell you, nobody. It's serving us everywhere. We were in ICC. We blackmailed the international community to go soft on us on ICC because we threatened to move out of Somalia.
Mr. Farah Maalim, thank you very much for your time, and I think sorting out Somalia is likely to sort out the Kenyan problem. Asante sana. So tonight we are asking you on our opinion poll question: can the Kenyan police be trusted to investigate and prosecute Jacob Juma's killing? Can Kenyan police be trusted to investigate and prosecute the killers?
Welcome back to News Sources. Now we're asking you on our question tonight on Twitter at KTN News, at James Maradion Sarigo. Can the police be trusted to investigate and prosecute the killers of Jacob Juma? Would like to hear your thoughts and opinions on exactly what you think about that. Tweet us at KTN News, at James Smart, and at D Onsarigo.
Now, a requiem mass for the slain businessman Jacob Juma was held today with calls from leaders asking for nothing less but the arrest and prosecution of his killers. The government is appealing for information from the public that appears to have lost trust in its investigative agencies. But during that requiem mass, this is what happened.
He was a very truthful man. When he said this, he meant it. And I'm not just saying this because he died. If I could meet him again, I would.
You want to say something?
Yeah. Now, we want to treat him well because he died.
Jacob Juma slapped the deputy president some time back. That is where the investigations should start. Those that strangled Mesha Kayebei are the ones, the same squad that was used to kill Jacob Juma.
And we start from there. The Deputy President has responded this evening, saying that the comments made by former Lugari MP are of serious concern to him. They seem to allude that he had anything to do with the death of Jacob Juma. He says he's investigating, and obviously legal actions will be taken against Lugari MP for making those claims. But that's why we start the conversation. Tough questions to ask on the killers and the killing of Jacob Juma.
Tough question, and if I go back to your question, the opinion poll, I think the statement by Jirongo really is, according to me, a very reckless statement, because I would have liked to maybe take the police to task over the way they have conducted this investigation. But when a leader stands up in a pulpit and to say that this is where the investigations have to start, then it complicates the whole thing. And that raises the question that as a country, where do we want to head to? Why don't we leave the instruments that are supposed to undertake this investigation to take its own course?
Of course, and we're joined by Milton Nyakundi, Karibu Sana of the program.
Thank you.
Delve right into it. Do you trust the police to investigate the killing of Jacob Juma?
I think it's really a catch-22 situation, if you ask me, because when you look at, you put the pieces together in this puzzle, there are several questions. But then again, what comes into mind is the history of investigations like this. In in the history of this country, we've had killings since J.M. Kariuki, from the late Tom Mboya, Pio Gama Pinto, all those names come into mind, as recently as .com, as they used to call him. And that really is the basis for Kenyans saying, then, can we really trust these people? But I wish Kenyans would for once get themselves down and say, let's trust the agencies to do their job. But unfortunately, that is not the case.
All right, Dennis, can we trust police? Can we just give the police ample time to investigate this and come back to us and say, we found the killers, we can't find the killers? Can we just give them time?
I think the police have a duty to protect lives and property in this country, and they have a duty to investigate such cases. Again, as Toskin said, the statement from the former Alugari Member of Parliament, Sarah Jirongo, borders on alarmist. And if he can back up this statement, again, the Deputy President is on record a few hours ago saying he was never slapped by Jacob Juma. So again, if we divorce politics from investigation, then we are likely to have some light at the end of the tunnel. But if this thing is politicized, if this matter is politicized, then we will lose it, Toskin.
It has been politicized already, because the moment you stand up in a public space and say that this is where the investigations have to start, what you are doing is a disservice to the family. I look at that young kid saying, really, why should we have done this to his father? That is now saying that we have to give the respect to that family and allow them, and allow all other institutions to take the action that is needed. But when you come out there, then you are saying that this is where the investigation has to start, then you have actually taken the police officers to a different tangent. And I know that in any investigation, if there is a crime committed here, the police will always operate within a radius. But then if you are saying that you take this route and leave the others, then that becomes a problem.
Toskin, what stops this policeman taking that particular route and saying, we will investigate this matter, we will get to the bottom of it? What stops them? What has stopped them for the last 6 days, for example, to give us leads? to give us a suspect, or to give us pointers, or to even give us a
Those are
motive.
just
I think
pronouncements.
really-
Those are just
I
pronouncements.
think
They need
really
to
what-
put down a document and submit, or even record the statements with the police.
No, I'm
so that
talking
they
about
can
the
start
police
to-
now.
Yeah.
Forget about those alarmist statements being made by Cyrus Jirongo, Boni Halwale, and the rest. I'm talking about an official government response saying we have arrested 10 people, or we are looking at this, we have examined spent cartridges from the scene. There's some awkward silence
Gentlemen,
from
too
the
many
state.
questions.
Yeah,
Too
go
many
ahead.
questions.
Yeah,
We'll have to take a different tangent
Yes.
because the Jubilee government has finally agreed to hold talks with the opposition code on IEBC. Deputy President William Ruto says the talks can only happen through Parliament. Finally, are we seeing, some dialogue chance, right?
If you ask me, I think this was bound to happen at the end of the day, and I'm basing my argument on the understanding, and I believe in the Jubilee government ability to interpret the Constitution. And obviously, when they say it can only happen within the meaning of
What
the
does that
law-
even mean?
No. I'm trying to make my argument and saying, if you read Article 10 of the Constitution, the national values, one of the key areas is involving the people, and how else do the people get involved in these things? Through their elected representatives. So I think that is the point that the Jubilee government is trying to amplify. On the flip side of that, what God would want to see is that these elected leaders, some of them cannot be trusted. Can then the Kenyans take their sovereignty back, because they have a right to do that, and be able to engage directly with among themselves? And I think that is where the disconnect is going to come from.
All right, the push and pull, Robin. We created this a new constitution without having all this chapter 10 that gives us, a lot of public participation, give the people of this country a lot of input in what happens in this country. But out of that constitution that was pretty much nothing, we created a new constitution. All right, now we have a constitution that is quite wide and gives a lot of space, but we cannot find opportunity to dialogue except within that constitution. Isn't that just too hilarious?
It's too hilarious. And I remember the now Deputy President William Ruto saying that during the referendum push, he said we need to step back a bit and then look at the Constitution, so that by the time we pass it, by the time we promulgate it, then we have to live by it. But now what is emerging is that there are some loopholes. But then we made our bed, the constitutional bed, we have to lie on it.
Are we saying the constitution is not enough? Is that what you're coming up with?
It should be enough. It should be enough. But if we get to a situation whereby if something doesn't suit us, if something goes wrong with our campaigns, then we need to change the constitution. Then we are losing it as a country. One thing that has emerged out of all this is that anytime anyone loses an election, he wants to look at something to blame. But we all know that campaigns have to be organized. And if you cannot organize yourself as a party or as a people, then it becomes a problem.
Milton, anytime someone loses an election, he must look for something to blame. I think Toskin is talking about Raila Odinga.
Well,
Not
if
necessarily.
really, the point he's making maybe is valid, but that is the nature of elections everywhere in the world, including the United States, where people would find reason why they lost an election. But let's look at the salient issues as they have come out. And I go back to Okoa, Kenya. The referendum push has been very consistent, and if, in my opinion, in 2013, we set a precedent in this country where we went to the Supreme Court. Raila Odinga, as the loser, petitioned the Supreme Court. There was a determination. But now, there were issues. If you ask me, it's not possible to determine an election result in 14 days. It was not even practical. And Okoa, Kenya has come with that as one of the solutions to this problem.
But
because the reason there is a mistrust is because court believes they had 900 pages of evidence that was
struck out.
But James,
inadmissible because of
Kenya,
time constraints.
Okoa Kenya appears to have died a natural one. Parliament is the only way out, maybe?
You see, operating on the fringes of constitution is quite a dangerous thing for everyone,
Sure,
all right?
sure.
That we must have, as a country, an opportunity to discuss things substantively inside not only the laws, but agreeing that it's fine that whatever you're asking for might not be something that we have in our current context, but we can have a discussion, all right? That we can have, because the nature of this country is that we came together, the spirit of Harambee. Obama to remind us that this country was built through the spirit of Harambee, all right? We didn't come and we were created with a constitution. This country was made.
Gentlemen, we must move on. Across Uganda, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has been sworn in a ceremony that was also attended by Africa's strongmen. Museveni has been in power for decades and has been accused of rigging elections not once, not two times. Gentlemen, should he be given another chance to run and be president?
What else do you do if you're in the shoes of one Dr. Kizza Besigye? I think as much as we may have opinions, you have to leave it to the Ugandans to be able to decide. But from an observer's point of view, I think Uganda deserves better than just the kind of intimidation, the kind of political tug and push, and what I would call muzzled democracy, or what we are made to believe is a democracy. But I think if you ask me, from the sentiments, I don't think that is the way to lead a country that is as progressive as Uganda.
Uganda deserves better than Museveni?
It's up to the Ugandans themselves, to determine who they want to lead them. But it takes us back to the question of organization when it comes to elections. You see, it's always very easy to pick the easy target. The easy target is always the government or the incumbency. But we all know that all our political parties across East Africa and even Africa at large, they are disorganized. I always go back to the campaign team of Obama. When Obama set out to campaign for the presidency, nothing could stop him because he had all the structures. He had the people, the right people to do all that.
Well, we have to talk in context. When Obama was campaigning, no one was arresting him and putting him in prison for so many days. So we have to be on the current context. Hang on,
nobody operated outside the confines of the law.
No, hang on, Toskin. Before we blame the entire opposition from this continent, all right, of not being organized enough.
From Rwanda to...
Yeah, from Rwanda to Kenya to, Uganda and that sort of thing. Yeah. The point is this, that democracy requires certain tenets, that we must be playing on the same field. I mean, both of you, are sports, experts. And you know that you cannot go to a sports field that, looks lopsided and you say you argue to a point, say what, the opposition did not play a very good game because...
the critical,
you've used a very good example.
Yeah. The critical point, Toskin, is that I'm not just talking about Museveni versus Besigye. I'm talking about Uganda as a nation. The Ugandans as a people, they deserve better in terms of how do they exercise their democratic right to vote? How do they, in terms of presenting themselves for elections, how does the playing field
it's a mockery of a constitution.
It's not about really Museveni versus Besigye. Yeah. I mean, it's not about organization. It's everything to do with the progressiveness of the country. How does Uganda move forward when half the country feels our president is so and so, when somebody wakes up in the morning and swears himself in as president and he's arrested? I mean, it's insane. I don't think
it's a mockery of democracy. Let's remind ourselves. Let's remind ourselves. In 1986, when a gentleman came from the bush to liberate the people of Uganda, made a very strong statement, said the problem of Africa, and Uganda in particular, is of leaders who want to stay too long in power. Isn't 30 years just too much?
I think James, Museveni is the face of bad politics in the continent, if you ask me. And when people think the country is you and you are the country, that's what it is.
I think Obama said something very, very critical, but I think in his speech in Egypt, he said that when you believe that you're the only person that can hold a country together, then you're actually the problem.
Absolutely.
No.
Hang on, gentlemen. Now have a look at these pictures. What do you think of what's going on here? If you look at the Super Bowl, this is a toddler by the Roho Israeli Church in Kibra. The youngster was named after code leader Raila Odinga's son, Fidel Odinga. The toddler was not baptized in water or by water. Take a look at these pictures. Dennis?
I think religion has its place, and we must respect it. I think the man of the cloth was either rolling with the baby on the ground or something, but I think that ritual of baptism has been achieved, and the young...
Because baptism is symbolic, isn't it?
Okay, it depends. What are you referring to? Because if you're talking about a Muslim, for example, they refer to the Quran. What does it say in terms of, that initiation process? But as a Christian and a Seventh-day Adventist for that matter, I would say that I do not think that is right, because going by the Bible, Matthew 28.
If there's a
talks
verse like
about,
that.
No,
Yes.
there is
We are
Matthew
going to
28.
verify this in a
Yes,
after
there
the
is
show.
Matthew 28, the
Yes.
Great Commission. It talks about that go ye therefore, and preach to them. When they believe, baptize them. I don't think a child can believe. So you cannot, in that strict context.
But it's not only them who baptize children, though.
That is what I'm
right?
saying.
Is it a fact?
Yeah, it's not only them who baptize. But if that practice put that kid in danger, maybe I would raise a voice. But in
It doesn't look the kid is in danger.
Yeah, the kid is not in danger.
Right.
And therefore, I'll exercise that religious tolerance. Whatever they are doing is there
Good for
on
them.
Shauri. But if it endangers the life of the kid, then that's when I'll talk.
Dennis, endangering the life of kid? I think
I
the
don't
kid
think
looks
so.
fine.
I mean, the kid is in very good hands, and I believe the parents are standing by in case she falls or he falls. Just give it to
I
the
think
kid.
my
I mean,
point
the kid
is-
has been baptized.
I think
he has a new
my
name.
point is, do we have a reference point? Do we understand, the fundamental beliefs of the Raw Israel Church? If we did, I think we will be competent enough
I would
to
say
make
what?
that argument.
Well, religious tolerance, as Toskin said, very good pictures. Welcome young Fidel to the world. That's News Sources. That's how we end it. Thank you very much for your company. Primetime News up next. Don't go too far.